Welcome, everybody, to the Resilient Minds podcast. Today, I have a very special guest. He's a proud husband, a father of four, a brother, and a philanthropist. And, of course, a former NFL punter for the New York Giants, winning a Super Bowl with them in 2012. He hosts an amazing podcast that tells you the secrets to a high-performance life. Please help me welcome the fittest guy in the NFL, Mr. Steve Weatherford. Welcome, brother. Welcome.
Listen to the crowd. No, it's different. We're in podcast land now. Eric, dude, thank you. I'm a proud father of five, man. So we gotta update your Wikipedia. It's all good, dude. I'm just giving you a hard time. But I'll tell you what, man, the difference between 4 kids and 5 kids is no different. You know, it went from like, hey, let's smother our kid 2-on-1 defense. And then it became from zone, it became man-to-man. And then it went zone in the other way because you're outnumbered. And then you get to a safety defense. Dude, I got 5 at 5+, dude. It's just prevent defense all day long. We're in this pandemic right now. We're actually like, Eric, I'll kind of flip around and show you, dude. We're at my house and all day, every day, I'm in prevent defense, man. You know, I want to create amazing experiences for my kids and teach them and do all these other things. But at the end of the day, my responsibility when you got 5 kids is prevent defense. Don't lose a kid and don't let a kid die.
I love it, man. I love it. Don't lose a kid. So when was the youngest born?
My youngest is Golden. So my oldest, my only king is Ace. Ace is 12.
Yeah.
And then my daughters are 10, 7, 4, and 2, and they go by Carney, Rara, aka Aurora, Josie, Jacqueline, aka Josie, and then we've got Golden Grace, and she's aka Hulk baby. So I've got 4 queens and a king. I've got my hands full. I've got a couple businesses. I've got a life mission to impact men on a deep, meaningful level. And my wife is pretty awesome, man. I met her when I was 17 years old, and I was on my recruiting trip to the University of Illinois to play football and run track there. And that's my queen, man. So that's kind of like my tribe, man. That's my mission, a little bit of who I am. But man, I'm really excited to be able to be on here to connect with you, because you know you shared some really cool stuff with me before we hit record, and just to have an opportunity, man, real talk, Eric, just to speak to your audience. And I don't take this as something that like, hey man, let me just hit record and be about my business. I just want everybody that's listening to this and watching this to know that this is important to me, that your time is important to me. And I hope the time that we spend together and the conversations that we have help to transform your mind, help to move you forward, to get closer to the person that you want to be, the man, the woman, the entrepreneur, the father, the husband, the sister, whatever it is that you want to be in your life. I hope the time that we spend together accelerates that in a supernatural way. In Jesus' name, thank you for having me.
Amen, brother. I love it, man. Blessing. I'm so grateful. I think that's, you know, a really amazing way to start off such a, you know, we already have great energy coming in just before we hit record. And, you know, it's always so beautiful when we can connect at such a deep level right off the hop. And, you know, give that energy out to anybody that's listening or watching, you know, if they're watching the video portion. And I'm just grateful to share. So you touched on some really key points there. You know, you've been with, you know, your high school sweetheart, so to speak, you know, for life. She's your queen. She's been there. You guys have a beautiful family. You've been through a lot of up and downs throughout the course. Now, my biggest thing is I always share, you know, on the Resilient Minds podcast here, that big experience. And I always believe that experience is that X factor behind what drives our why, you know? And so if you don't mind sharing some of your experience kind of growing up, going through this element of resilience, of pushing through, you know, having your high school suite or like right next to you, supporting you through these endeavors, you know, hitting the NFL. You know, what's been like that, and how has that helped you persevere in, you know, creating this whole element of determination as you continue to create such a, you know, an abundant lifestyle for yourself, your family, your kids, and obviously the men that you serve with your mission?
Yeah, so that was a lot of questions, and I'm going to choose to start at, you know, the name of the podcast. It's the Resilient Minds podcast, and for me, if you look at, like, you know, you read books and about psychology and about motivation and how to sustain it and how to create it and how to connect with people to inspire them to be great as well. And a lot of what our identity is was shaped in between 0 and 8 years old. And so I look back at my life after reading something like that, and I go back to kind of connect the dots of my experience, as you say, what was that like? And a lot of the way that my mind is now, like, granted, I work very strategically and intentionally to, like, be vigilant with making it better, physically, mentally, spiritually, all of that. But a lot of that, without me being strategic or intentional, man, that just happens to our mind between 0 and 8. And so I'll take you back to kind of like my earliest memories of, like, who I am and, like, what I'm worth. And it was in kindergarten. I think that was kind of like an age that a lot of us start to recollect some more of the vivid memories. And one of my earliest memories was getting sent to the principal's office the first day, and then going back the next day and getting in trouble for a different thing, and ending back in the principal's office 5 days in a row. Eric, Monday through Friday, ended up in the principal's office. And I started to kind of make agreements over myself. I started to kind of form an identity of, like, who I am and what I'm worth by comparison to the other 26 kids that are in my class. None of them got sent to the principal's office, and 5 days in a row, here I am, a kid with extreme ADHD, not a bad kid, but a kid that is not built to be into this type of system. And so I decided that I'm not good. Like, yeah, I went to Sunday school and I knew I made trouble there, but there were only 5 or 6 other kids, and you're in your family, and I've got 2 brothers and a sister. I know I'm different than them, but that's not that many people. My earliest memory, Eric, is like 5 years old and being like, dude, I feel like an alien in here, and all I do is make trouble for the leader of our little tribe of 27 humans, right? And so the only time between, like, 0 and 8 that I can ever, and it's not like my parents weren't good parents, this is what I created in my mind, right? And we all have the ability to have a perspective and an experience of something, and it could be completely different for somebody else, but my experience is my reality, and that's what shaped who I am and the mind that I get to work on creating a better version of every single day. And so my point to sharing that to you is, I hated myself every area of my life. Sunday school, hated myself because all I did was create problems for other people. At school, man, that was 10 times harder because you're there 10 times longer. Uh, Road trips in the car with my brothers and sisters, oh my gosh, forget about it. You know what I mean? And so my point is, the only place that I ever felt like celebrated was when I was playing sports, when it was soccer, it was basketball, or it was t-ball, and it was these different activities, because hyperactivity and split second decision making was like a superpower. And so when I was there and I used just what was natural to me, just moving around all the time and being busy, that resulted in, like, points on the board, or encouragement from my teammates, or just any type of energy and action in sports is like a good thing, right? And so after every single game, people, other kids' parents would tell me how good I am and how great I am and how valuable I am, and, oh man, we missed you last week, and when you weren't here, our team was different. I felt valuable, right? And so when we look back on our mindset and what a resilient mindset is, and my experiences as a kid, I created that I'm worthless unless I'm playing sports, unless I'm achieving. And so that mindset that I created, a little 8-year-old mind like that says I'm worthless unless I'm winning. What do you think is going to happen in my life?
Yeah.
I'm either going to absolutely obsess myself with winning and taste it enough to keep going, like what happened to me, or you just can decide in that moment as that 8-year-old kid that this, like, pursuing that, it hurts too much. It requires too much for this tiny little bit of, like, oh, I'm valuable and I feel good for, like, the 15, like maybe the 5-minute walk from the end of the game to your car when you see the other parents, and maybe your dad is, like, kind enough to say a positive word to you in front of, other parents, because that's, like, what other parents are doing. So he'll give you some too. And so my point is, like, for every person listening to this and watching this, like, think back to when you were a kid and how much other people's approval meant to you. And so what I did as that 8-year-old boy is I just went all in, man, and I obsessed myself. And I was lucky enough that God gave me some ability that obsession turned into talents, and those talents turned into skills, and those skills I was able to monetize. And thankfully that those skills were something that actually society even cares about. Like, I was good at a sport that commanded that people be paid like X amount of dollars, and they're on TV all the time. Like, what if I was the bobsledder? And so when I look back and I'm retracing the steps and I'm looking at the dots and I'm actually connecting the dots backward to see where God has moved in my life and how, like, at every struggle, there's been provision in that assignment. And it just kind of like the experience of right now in Corona with all of this craziness that's going on, like this is another experience for us. And I think, like, and this is a quote, one of my dearest friends that I played football with on the New England Patriots, he said this quote, his name is Marquise Cole. He said, if you're really going to be a lifelong learner, you don't get to be selective where the lessons come from. And so when something like this happens, Corona pandemic, and all of these things are changing and shifting in economics and all this craziness, and the fear level is rising, you can't be choice about where the lesson comes from. And so there's a lesson to learn in this pandemic. And so when you talk about a resilient mindset and you talk about self-worth and you talk about proving it to somebody, the whole time I was trying to prove it to other people that I was worth something. And then something shifted in my life where I decided to start to play the game of life, Eric, for an audience of one. And I knew if I woke up every single day and the only person's approval that I was seeking was my father's and not my DNA dad. I love my dad, super righteous dad, just an awesome dad, still married to my mom and everything. Like, he was awesome. But when I played for his approval because of the way he grew up with his dad didn't give him the love and the affirmation of, son, I'm proud of you. You know, he didn't get that. And so he didn't give that to me. He didn't edify my little spirit. And so I spent so much of my life pursuing that edification of other people and placing the power and placing my self-worth and placing what I was valuable of on other people's approval. And it was like, before Instagram was around, it was like an Instagram, it was like it had the solidification of Instagram, meaning like I could feel great today and get a lot of likes and a lot of comments, but then if I played poorly tomorrow, like nobody's even seeing my stuff. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so it was like my high was how well I played. And if I played poorly, I was depressed until the next opportunity that I had to compete and get other people's approval. So I know that was a really long-winded
it's fascinating
question to the resilient mind, you know?
No, I think that's fascinating because there's so many of us, and how many of us as young men or women, you know, we grow up and we have these beliefs from being young, and that they later condition us to later, you know, believe a certain way because of us as kids looking for edification or looking for approval. Self-worth is a common theme, you know, and I love, by the way, when you said, you know, playing for the game of one, right? And, you know, and to me, like, all of a sudden I had this, felt feeling of, you know, playing for that greater purpose, or, you know, looking after Steve and the family, or that channel that's being provided by, you know, the greater source that's coming through you, right? And that is, like you said, it's so fascinating that everybody that is going through these journeys consistently, these experiences, and creating their X factors, they all there's a common theme here, and it's a contribution that's being channeled through them through something that's greater. And I think that's fascinating. It gives me goosebumps when you talked about it, bro.
You said discovering their X factor, or uncovering their X factor. And I want to take it a step further than like an X factor, because that's like such a played out term, but it's like, it's the term that, you know, distinguishes what's different from Eric than what's different from Steve. Like, maybe our mission might be like aligned, but what makes you different? And like, why would you need to have a podcast if I have a podcast, if we have like the same mission? And I'll tell you exactly why. Because every type of person needs a different type of hope messenger. So you and I could have the same theme, the same message, the same mentor, the same teacher, the same mission, but the way that we deliver it and the road that we walked in order to come to the place of having this podcast and this conversation, like, there will never, ever be another time where you and I will sit down in this moment, in this season, with these things going on right now, having these conversations, man. And I just think, like, when you look at X Factor and you want to take it a step further than that, man, I believe every person that was created, and this has actually been proven, there was a genome study in Sweden about DNA. and how it's been proven that our DNA, Black people, white people, Chinese people, people from Iceland, people from Peru, that our DNA is 99% the same. And there's only a 1% difference in DNA to DNA.
Wow.
And I believe, like, for me, when I look back on my life, and like I was saying, you know, kind of like connecting the dots to figure out like what's my X factor and when did it, like, my experience of like becoming my greatest self or whatever happened, and you connect the dots back, and I start looking at my 1% and the 1% of what about me that made me different. And when we start to embrace the differences in us, and the reason I described to you about being a different style or a different flavor
Yeah.
of a hope messenger is I believe your greatest days are ahead for you, Eric, and the greatest days are ahead for people watching and listening to this. The more you choose to embrace that weirdness about you, the more that you choose to talk about the things about yourself that honestly, like, they make you feel dirty and ashamed about yourself. Because I'll tell you this, if you really want to shift people and you really want to transform men or women's lives, it's about sharing with them what you struggle with or what you have struggled with, not so you can get to the good part of telling them how you overcame it, but to connect with them on their pain point. Because people don't, it's like that old saying, man, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. But that's real
Wow.
talk, man. You know, like, it's great that people care about you, but you know what even is a more special step than people like knowing where you came from, is people that have traveled that road, have felt that pain. Because that's a messenger that, you know what, because it's hard to connect with somebody who like won a Super Bowl and has 5 kids and blah 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 blah. But when you know what I struggled with, when you know that my entire life I vomited before every single NFL game that I ever played in, because I was scared to death that the people in the stands, that my coaches, that my teammates, that my wife, that my kids were going to find out that I was a fraud and a phony.
Wow.
I created this whole thing in my mind that, like, you know what I mean? It didn't make sense. If you look at my statistics, you can plainly see that these numbers make me the number 2 or number 1 or number 7 in the world. But in my mind, I was scared to death that I was going to lose my job because people were going to find out I'm not as good as what they think I am.
Mm.
And it's all like, when you talk about a resilient mind, like, I was able to achieve such a ridiculous level of success. And I'm not saying that in self-promotion. I'm saying that because my mindset allowed me to get there, but I didn't get to enjoy any of that road. And that's what I want people to hear, is I want people to be able to get to their mountaintop, to where they're holding that Lombardi trophy, whatever that may be in their life, but to get there, not motivated by the approval of other people, but motivated, but what's important to them. It's another quote from like the Fight Club. You know, like,
Dude.
why are we working so hard to get all of these things to impress these people that we don't even care about? You know what I mean? And that's when I want to like kind of like circle it back to an audience of one. And I'm not trying to make this like a soapbox preach session, whatever that is to you.
Yeah.
And if that audience of one is you,
Yeah.
get serious about it and quit giving your power away to other people or to other things or to other like numbers. Like, there's not a number in your bank account, and there's not an address, zip code that you can live in that's going to make you feel different about yourself. And the reason I can say that is, like, that's a painful experience that I had to learn for myself. I thought putting my family in a certain type of home and the car and the blah blah blah, like, these things that as we're little kids we make up in our mind, when we get these things we're going to feel differently about ourselves. Well, I'm that little kid that did a lot of those things, and they didn't fulfill me. But the thing that's fulfilling me now more than ever is waking up every single day and having a very short checklist. I get to wake up every single day and I get to be integrity, I get to be honor, and I get to be accountability. And I really like simplified my whole list. Like, yes, I have a calendar. Yes, I have a to-do list and all this other stuff. But I know at the end of the day, that schedule and that to-do list will not predict how I feel about me, Eric. If
Yeah.
I show up in integrity, and if I show up in honor, and I show up in accountability, no matter what gets done or any of those things, at the end of the day, when I'm brushing my teeth and I'm looking back at me and I see integrity, I see honor, and I see accountability, dude, I'm going to check that box, man. The audience of one is happy with the man that I'm looking at.
Boom.
You know what I mean? So you
Dude.
simplify it and you gamify how you get proud of yourself, because I believe that's the hardest thing to do in this lifetime on this planet, especially for me. And I know for a lot of men, it's hard to get proud of ourselves,
Yeah.
man. How do you get proud of yourself? Gamify life, man. quit setting the point of like your happiness over the cognitive horizon, because once you get to that million, then you need to get to that 10 million. And once you get to that 10, you know what? Actually, I need to get 10 liquid in here. And then, you know what I mean? You'll just keep boom, 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 boom. And you know what? You'll wake up. You'll be 57 years old. You have high blood pressure. You have terrible health. You have terrible relationships, but you'll have hit all of those things that you thought were so important, and you'll be freaking miserable. So I'm believing that every person that's listening to this podcast or watching this right now is going to hear what I'm saying, and let this seed be planted in you that you're enough right now. There's nothing that you can achieve that will make you more valuable. It's not about degrees. It's not about dollar bills. It's about the opinion that you have of yourself. And when you fall in love with the process of developing your 1% and continuing to have more confidence revealing who you are to people, that's when you can be most monetized, because that's when you become the most complete hope messenger you can be created to be, because nobody has your 1%.
Dude, that's just golden. And you know, I just want to really recognize that everybody goes through imposter syndrome. You see what I mean? Like you're on the field ready to go play, you know, for and you're puking before the games, and you have this feeling that you might be a fraud, but you have all these statistics, right? So how many times in the world, right? Like people are going through this element of imposter, but you still got to be resilient and pursue what you believe in, which is always that 1%. And, you know, turning back and circling back to that 1%, that really kind of, you know, is essentially, I like to think of it as our why purpose, our why factor, why we continue to pursue that why. So what has been, Steve, your biggest why as you continue, you know, to be, you know, you're philanthropic, you're an amazing father, you're an amazing husband, you serve at a high level, you know, you're doing big things in the world. What's now the fuel to that why now?
When I die, when I die, and you know, you want to talk about like what can really set a man on fire is when he knows like his purpose on this planet. You know what I mean? And I've done a lot of these different things, like goals, you know what I mean? But how many purposes have I served? And so when you ask me a question, kind of like rattling off, you know, you've these kids and done this, and, you know, kind of like the Wikipedia type of stuff, like I'm very proud of those things. But at the end of the day, I know if you tripled or quadrupled that list, it wouldn't make me feel any different about myself, because those things are not my purpose. Now, when I want to talk to you about my purpose is when I die, and like I close my eyes, and when I die, I believe I'm going to stand before God, and God's going to ask me two questions. He's going to ask me, you know, how many people are going to live forever because I gave you life? I want to be able to look over my shoulder, Eric, and I want that line to be so long, because my level of impact and my level of influence was so great in people's lives that they forget that I ever played football. You know what I mean? And then the second question he's going to ask me, all of these gifts that I've bestowed upon you, what have you done with them? And so when you talk about looking at your face at the end of the day, when you're brushing your teeth, and I know a lot of people, we can look at Instagram and like see all of the gifts in these other people and just start to discount ourselves. I know, dude, I started high school at 108 pounds. It was really easy for me to disqualify myself from any type of like next level competition, varsity, college, pros, etc. But just stay steady on this, man. If it lights your human spirit on fire, the variabilities, the obstacles of your genetics or the place that you're from. I'm from Terre Haute, Indiana, man. More than 50% of the people I went to school with were on free or reduced lunches. And there's a million more people that could tell you stories that had it way worse than me. So I'm not going to try to inspire you because I had it so hard. I want to inspire you because I want to remind you, and I want to let you know, and I want to give you permission right now that you have a purpose. Like there was a word that was spoken over you, and it's not like luck that you're here. There's a reason that you're here on this planet. There's a purpose to your life. I'm not saying your purpose has to be the same as my purpose, but get clear about what you want in life. Like the cars and the clothes and the things and the stuff. Like, I'm not saying you can't have nice things. Dude, I'm sitting in this beautiful house,
Yeah.
and it's a whole lot nicer to do a podcast in a nice house than it is in a crappy house. But this house won't make anybody happy. I love this house because I get to share it with people. I love this house because I can create experiences here. I love this house because I can coach other men into their legacy greatness in my own home. And so I want to circle all of this back to purpose and what I believe my purpose is on this planet. And so when I wake up every single day and I go through the checklist of what I got to do, I'm not as focused on that as much as I'm focused on what I get to be. And my list is integrity, honor, and accountability. And I know if I show up that way in relationships, if I show up that way in coaching, I show up that way in business, I show up that way on my podcast, God's hand and his favor will be on every single thing that I do. And so it kind of takes a lot of the overwhelm away that we have to do it all on our own. Like, God created us to live in relationship. And that's why doing a Zoom like this is more fun than it's what it's ever been. And this is why I say yes to this, because normally I say no to Zooms. But God has shown me during this craziness that this is an incredible weapon that allows you and I to connect. Otherwise, we would not. So thank you for this opportunity. And just reminding everybody out there, man, I know we're not ending the podcast this moment, but if you remember one thing from all of our time together, is, dude, your life has a purpose. You matter. You're worth it. Doing the work is not wasting your time. I promise you that. And there is a bright future and better days ahead of you for every facet of your life if you'll just lean into the consistency and continue to believe that tomorrow is going to be better than today if I just don't stop.
I love it, man. And that's the thing, is about not stopping and creating consistency. And you touched on 3 points in your checklist, which I really loved. And integrity, honor, and accountability. And, I believe, and I'm sure you're the same way, that, rituals and your routines throughout a daily consistent component are really important, is really important to creating momentum in your lifestyle, whether that's health, wealth, relationships, whatever the case may be. Now, do you mind describing the process behind your rituals, behind your routine? Because I know that you have a pretty crazy busy life, but what's important is that you still make time for your ritual, your routine. What needs to happen, and you mentioned integrity, honor, accountability. 3 big words a few times. So I just wanted to see if you can describe that process behind what your day would look like.
Yeah, so I want to talk to you about processes. I want to talk to you about rituals. I want to talk to you about routines. And I also want to talk to you about becoming the most powerful version of yourself.
Yeah.
I love routines. I love rituals. I love structure. But when you're a leader and when you're the king of your home and when you're the leader of your business, one thing we're not always afforded is routine. And so one thing I work for in my life is not to get a better routine, is to be able to create rhythm within myself. Now, the first step to get to rhythm is to create routine. And it's kind of like muscle memory. Get a routine. And I've spent so many different years kind of guinea pigging in a scientific fashion what's going to get me to the point where I can perform. Now, perform can mean a lot of things. Perform can be like when I'm my best dad, or when I'm my best professional punter, when I'm my professional TV show host, when I'm my best professional podcaster, insert here. My point is, I've spent a lot of time and I've spent a lot of money working with different specialists, wearing things like a whoop band. I have a hyperbaric chamber at my house. And so I don't want to really waste time talking to you about what my routine is. I want to talk to people about how important routine is. But the goal isn't to get the best routine. The goal is to be able to create a routine that gets your body into a rhythm. There's a reason they don't call it a circadian routine, right? When you sleep, what do they call it? They call it a circadian rhythm, because it is something that your body will automatically fall into a process of doing. And so when you think about routine and you think about rhythm, I don't want to think to myself, when something bad happens to me, I need to go through this routine so I can react the way that I want to react. No, 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 no. I've been working this routine for such a long time. When adversity hits, boom, like a sniper, dude, like a pro football player, like a master specialist, tactical surgeon. When it happens, muscle memory, dude, I just kick straight into it. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm just speaking on routine to rhythm. Is your body and your mind and your tongue and your language will just react the way that it's been trained to react. And so when you ask me about routine, I really just wanted to speak to people about where the next level is from routine, because we read all these books, and Aubrey Marcus is a dear friend of mine. I thought his book was fantastic, and I'm not downing or gunning his book, because a lot of people really just want to know, like, where do I start with routine? And I wanted to give people, when we talk about routine, I want to give you vision for what the next level is. And that's rhythm. When you get into not a life routine, you get into a life rhythm. That's when you're at your ninja level of leadership. That's when you are the king of your household. That's when you are the leader in your business. That's when you can create on a roll, because it's become part of the DNA of who you are. And so just encouraging people, whatever your routine is right now, control the variables within your routine. Don't say, oh man, hey, I follow Steve Weatherford on Instagram and he said, man, take this CBD, take 2,500 milligrams before you go to bed, and then take these supplements. And you start taking all these things that, you know, you hear the people that you look up to recommend, but then you don't know what is actually giving you the positive or the negative things. And so my point is, when you get these routines, add one variable in at a time and then see how you feel. Keep a journal. And it doesn't even have to be every single day, because I know that's super tedious. But on Sunday, if you can square up 10 minutes to just do a body scan, do a mind scan, do a spirit scan on how the last week treated you and what variable changed. And then you can just week over week over week over week. Remember, life is a macro game. We're not just playing it, you know, for the week. We're playing this for 10 years down the road. But if you can be intentional and strategic week over week of optimizing your mindset, optimizing your spirit, optimizing your physical, could you imagine where you'll be in 10 years? That's just crazy. And I've been doing very, very similar and intentional and strategic for over 10 years for myself. And man, I feel like I've got light years to go, but it's just a journey of personal development through daily doses, really daily doses of discomforts and disciplines. And if you can strategize and get really intentional about what you're trying to improve, that's my template for personal development that I just described to you. You know, daily doses of discomfort and discipline. That's Man Academy to me. That is me waking up every single day to civilize my mind, to awaken my spirit, and to make savage my body. That's what me and my son do on the daily, and we call it Man Academy.
I love it. And daily doses of this discomfort.
Discomfort and discipline.
Discomfort and discipline. Amazing. And I love the point of rhythm, man. The circadian rhythm, that just like aha moment for me, man, because it was like, now it's, when I wake up, I wake up without an alarm clock now, because it's just become part of the rhythm, right? And 100%, like that was it literally just hit me like it was brilliant. Where do you come up with these amazing ideas? Like, how does this show up in your business, in your mindset?
Well, if I could recommend one book, man, it's the #1 bestseller of all time. There's really a lot of great life lessons in the Bible.
I love it.
And I'm not just saying that, you know, to be a holy roller, but man,
No.
I've actually gotten like studious about it. You know, I grew up and my parents went to church and everything, but man, there was a change about 2 years ago when I stopped like going to church and I stopped like doing the religious thing, and I really started to pursue like relationship with God, you know, not checking all these boxes and feeling like I couldn't say like shit, you know, like, because that's how I grew up, you know, like I grew up, you can't drink and you shouldn't say a cuss word and all these different things. And like my parents were perfect, and my brothers and my sisters, like they followed the commandments, and I was a wild child, dude. I did all the drugs, I banged all the chicks, you know what I mean? Like I was a wild dude. But my point to mentioning all that to you is I felt like religion, and I still feel like religion is like a ball and chain. It's like a whole bunch of a list of things that you can't do. But about 2 years ago, I decided to take the same type of like maniacal obsession of developing my spiritual the same way that I'd done with my mental and my physical, because I had seen what that had opened up for me in my life, you know, playing in the NFL and going on all these TV shows and all this other stuff. I had seen what developing my mental and physical could do for me. And I'm 37 now. So that was at 35 years old. I wondered, like, man, I feel like there's a whole component of like my being, what God created, that I just honestly I haven't spent any time to try to like intentionally develop. And it was almost kind of one of those things where I'm like, man, people talk about us having like, you know, more abilities than, you know, that I'm just going to try this out. And so I really started to like study the Bible, and I really started to look at messages, and not just to like cheer myself up, but actually to look at things that were written so many years ago that were actually like prophetically gifts that God has placed inside of us. And honestly, like when I read it, life started to make a whole lot more sense to me, because to me, when I started to study it, not just like read it because you're in church and he says turn to this page, when I actually tried to study it the way that I studied physiology books and the way that I studied glutamine and branched chain amino acids, when I studied the Bible, the way that I studied that, it started to make sense to me. And so when you say, where do you come up with things like that? Honestly, reading things like that makes you think a different type of way. So it's not like I like want to say I learned it in the Bible, but when you study something like that that is so timeless and there's so much wisdom in there, and it sounds weird to say because I'm not a Bible thumper. I don't read the Bible well, you know, but there's a wisdom in there, man. And that wisdom will make you think differently. And so when you ask me where you come up with things, well, it starts with what my diet is. Like what are my eyes seeing on the daily? What are my ears hearing on the daily? Who am I following on social media? Because everything you do and everything you read and everything you hear influences your brain. And so without me really thinking about things, just having conversation with you, things that come out of my mouth are a reflection and a regurgitation of things that I'm allowing into myself. And I'm just consuming a whole lot more of that wisdom than what I did earlier in my life, because like I said, I only prayed and I only read the Bible when it was church or it was before a football game. And I felt like if I vomit again, I'm going to be dehydrated. You know what I mean? Like I only went to God when I felt like I just didn't have enough. And now I'm just strategically going and praying and reading the word the same way I'll go hit leg day, even if my back and my knees hurt, because it's what I'm committed to doing. I'm committed to the future of what the fruit of that grind is. And so spiritually, if I really want to know what that fruit's like, and I've seen fruit from the physical grind, what would my spiritual grind look like? And so, man, I'm like right in the middle of that pursuit. And to be honest with you, I'm still on this physical and mental pursuit, but it's just added almost kind of like a three-prong approach to what I'm doing. I feel like I'm so much more well-rounded of a man and a father and a leader and an entrepreneur and a marketer and all the things that I am a better version of all of those things, because I just feel like I'm getting so much more growth in all of the other areas. Because when it comes down to speaking, when it comes down to doing, when it comes down to being, it all has to do with what's going on in your mind. And so this, to me, this lifestyle, this man academy of waking up every single day to civilize your mind, make savage your body, and awaken your spirit consistently, even on the days that you won't, is yielding fruit in my life and fruit in my son's life, because I'm homeschooling him. To be honest with you, man, it's one of the coolest experience of my entire life.
And I think that, you really touched it. It combines the whole physical, the mental, along with the
Yeah.
spiritual. And, I was on the same kind of journey where, my parents, same thing, religious, but, I felt a really deeper connection to the whole spiritual realm. And now, like leading into Hinduism and like the Bhagavad Gita, the Bible,
You're
Jesus.
seeking, man. I like it, man. You're curious. That's the way to be. Like go and go and go, and when it makes sense, man, just commit your whole self to it. I love, dude. I love it, man. I love the fact that you're hungry for answers. I love the fact that you're curious to ask other people and to apply and apply what works for you and what doesn't work for you. It's kind of like, take the meat and spit out the bone, man. And so I just wanted to honor you, man. I don't know you from Adam. We've only spent this time. But you were very persistent to be able to get onto the calendar to do this. You were very creative as well. And so, dude, I just wanted to give you some honor, man, because, dude, your best days truly are ahead of you. And it's because you come with a humble spirit and you seek wisdom. Not that I'm like but you know what I mean.
Oh man, I'm learning so much from you, bro. I don't think you give yourself enough credit either, Steve. Like, you are a brilliant man. Like, I'm listening and I'm really, I've researched and I've spent time following you for quite some time, and but having this type of like really elaborate conversation, you
thanks,
really,
man.
and I hope all the listeners really recognize that too. Is like, there is tremendous brilliance, and like the level, 100%, Steve. Like, you bring a really unique level of really awareness, of consciousness to men out there, to people out there that need it. And I think it really needs to be amplified, especially among, like, dude, you're a beast when it comes to, like people don't, but they don't see that sometimes. Do you see what I mean? Like, they forget that there is a lot of other components that we have to add when it comes to, if we have this persistence in our bodies, what else are we persistent on, right? And I just want to really also, edify that, because it's really important. And I'm just really blessed to be able, and 100% persistent determination.
Yeah, man.
I'm grateful that we're here together. So really wanted to, you talked about the Bible, the teachings, the spiritual component. How does show up? How do those values you continue to hone in on, they show up in your work, right? They show up in your mission, and they continue to show up. How do they show up? As a result of being able to now pass that on to all, the men that you're serving through your podcast, through, your fitness routines, your diet plans, your business altogether, because I think that there's all of that. Like you said, we take it in, and then we can utilize our own experience to it, and then help others with it.
No, man, that's good. So the question I'm hearing you ask me, I'm guessing, is how does it show up in my business? And when I hear you ask me, like, how does it show up in my business, like those principles or those disciplines, like, let's just take the simple, like the three, if I was going to tattoo three things on my forehead: integrity, honor, and accountability, right? Like, let's just say, like, how do those show up in my business or in my life? And I believe the greatest way to impact somebody, and I believe the greatest way to influence somebody, isn't to tell somebody what to do, but it's actually to show them the fruit, like show them what's possible if they heed your advice or take your wisdom, And I just believe the internet's a really scary place right now, because it's so easy to, like, consume content right there, like this. And there's a lot of people out there with a lot of opinions, right? And there's a lot of people out there with a lot of gifts for saying things and convincing people. But a lot of those people that are good at, like, selling people into programs or doing podcasts, are really good at saying the right things. But if you actually truly look at those people's lives, if you look at their businesses, if you look at their marriage, if you look at their health, like their actual health, not whether or not they have a six pack, but if you look at their actual health, and you look actually, like, under the car hood, like, you see this Ferrari, but when you look under the hood of some of these people, there's just not the fruit there. And so when you ask me, how does it show up in my business? Man, that's in my DNA, dude. Like, I don't wake up and, like, try to be integrity. It's what I am. And so that's what when I wake up in the morning, it's not like a to-do list of these are the things that I need to do. Like, I wake up in the morning and I have I am statements. I look in the morning in the mirror and I say, I am integrity, I am honor, and I am accountability. And therefore, everything I do in this day will be those things. So you ask me again, how does this show up in my business? Dude, if you buy a supplement from me, you'll find out, like, I'm integrity, I'm accountable. You know what? Right now, we've sold a jillion greens. and we're late to ship them to people. And I just emailed people and just let them know exactly what's happened, man. God's hand is on our business. We're selling way more than we've ever sold before. Man, we're so happy. Please be patient. Your shipment's going to be 2 days late. You know what I mean? Integrity, honor, and accountability. You know what? People are not really trying to hear that. They want their stuff and they want it now because I'm competing with Amazon, right? They're not trying to hear that. But when I come to them the way that I am and the way that I wake up, I am these things. It bleeds everywhere, man. If I'm coaching a man in his business, he's not going to have to sift through some type of hidden agenda that I'm trying to get from him. Man, I am for you, dude. I am for your business. I am for your marriage. So how does it show up in my business, dude? I am those things. So I can't pinpoint where they show up because they're everywhere.
I love it, man. I love it, dude. And it is really in your DNA. I can sense that with the energy and the love and the compassion and the empathy that you continue to just shine bright with, bro. And I really want to just quickly pivot to one really powerful, curious question. So, I had Rob Gronkowski on the show a little while back, and I just wanted to touch base because I know you guys played each other in the NFL for the Super Bowl, the Giants versus the Patriots. How was that game? And like, I just want to hear it from the horse's mouth. It looked pretty intense. You know what I mean? But I can just imagine the energy.
You can always tell somebody that really doesn't know like football that well, or maybe they didn't grow up with it, because you're like, you guys played each other in the Super Bowl. You could just tell, man. Hey, only reason I'm saying that is because I could tell that, and I didn't even wait until you needed to say like a boot or anything like that.
Yeah.
When you were introducing me, I could tell you didn't grow up with football. But to your point, dude, much respect though, dude. I love that you're doing this the way that you're doing it, man, because it's authentic and it's real. I love that. So I appreciate you for that. So what was it like playing Rob in the Super Bowl? It's every little boy's dream. You know what I mean? But to me, I was so concerned with myself. I don't even really remember ever seeing Gronk that day. I don't really ever remember seeing Tom Brady that day because, man, you got to think about it, dude. There's 142 million people watching. And honestly, at the end of the day, there's probably only about 20 million of them that want to see you do well. The other 122 million are like praying that something terrible happens so they have something to like tweet or put on Instagram. And so knowing that going into that game, what was it like playing against Rob Gronkowski? Man, I don't want to say I was scared to death, but I was so like late because I wasn't scared. I was so laser focused on what my job is, because if you think about it, I only play 4 plays a game. Yeah. And I have 4 chances to go out there. And if I go 3 for 4, like in baseball, that's a great game. If I go 3 for 4, I'm fired the next day, meaning I go out there and have 3 great kicks and 1 bad one. I'm fired the next day. So the expectation of consistency and surgical execution from my position was of the highest degree. And so I really didn't get to enjoy the games as much as I really would have liked to, because I was like in my Zen place. But warming up before games, man, dude, I used to go up to like Brett Favre. When we played Brett Favre, I ran right up to him. I was a rookie. I'm like, hey, Mr. Brett, really nice to meet you, man. Like a freaking just a redneck from Indiana. But dude, I live my freaking dream. And the craziest thing, just like I said for you, Eric, that your best days ahead of you, and I'm believing for every person watching and listening to this, that their best days are ahead of them as soon as they decide that they are. My best days are ahead of me, man. Like, I'm going to become so impactful and so influential in people's lives, shifting and transforming the way that they think, speak, and do life, that people are going to completely forget about this whole other facet of my life, because they want to know how I can help them now, man. I believe God has used me in a supernatural way. It's not because of what I know and my education, dude. I never even graduated from high school, Eric. You're interviewing a high school graduate, homeboy. You know what I mean? But I know, kind of like what I was saying earlier, man, like, I'm not waiting for qualifications or a degree to pursue what I feel like God's calling is on my life. And when you were talking about purpose, what I feel like my purpose is, God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. And I believe I'm called, and I believe every single person, if you'll listen, God will call you to something greater than who you are. So people that are struggling with anxiety or depression or these thoughts that, you know what, dude, I don't know what this guy's talking about. I don't know what my purpose or my gift is. Keep pressing forward. You're
Yeah,
worth it. You have a purpose. You have a gift. You have a calling. But if you quit, you'll never figure out what it is.
I love it, man. Dude, I really want to respect your time, and I want to, I know that we're winding down here, and I just have one more question. But before I have any questions, do you want to just share where everyone can find you, if they have any
Yeah.
with what you're doing or any of your with your mission, how they can find you and learn more about you?
Yeah, I guess, man, if you guys want to connect with me, the best way to do it would be to text me. I'm sure you can maybe put my number in the show notes, but
I'll
it's
put them in the show notes,
949.
100%.
Yeah, 949-763-5934. And when you text me from there, honestly, that's going to be the best place to connect with me, because I host events like Upgrade Your Human, where I take 20 to 25 men, sometimes women are invited too, but 20 to 25 men. And our last event was in Park City, Utah. We had the #1 Wim Hof breathing specialist in the world come in, and just take us through 3 days of intense training. We climbed the mountain in our underwear, and so I pretty much replicated a trip that I went together with Aubrey Marcus and Lewis Howes and Mike Posner and Humble the Poet. And so that's what Upgrade Your Human events are. And so you can text me to get info on there. We're going to put together 4 more events this year. And then for anything social media wise, man, and any of the other stuff that I have coaching wise, just text me and we'll get you dialed in. And social media, Instagram is Weatherford5, and my podcast is the Steve Weatherford Show. Thank you for allowing me to mention that, Eric.
Of course, and I'll have them all in the show notes, Steve. So for anybody that's driving, I'll have them in the show notes for you guys, along with the phone number and all the links. So last question before we go, Steve, if you had 3 days to live, what would you do?
I would be right here in this house, man, with these people. I would fly in my parents and my in-laws and my high school homies, and we would get some kegs back here, and we would light it up for 3 days, dude. Real talk. I would just want to be with the people that have been along for the ride. You know what I mean? This whole freaking big old backyard right here.
Yeah, bro.
I would want to host an intergalactic keg here for 3 days, and I would want to be with my kids, and I would want to ride electric scooters and boosted boards and dirt bikes, and I would want to play horse with my son. I would want to drink wine and tequila with my wife. Um, I would want to swim. I would want to play can jam with my son. I would want to play cornhole with my brothers. Um, yeah, man, I think I could fill up 3 days in this backyard, man. So I'd want to be right here. I just want to import a couple homies.
I love it, Steve. I love it, man. Thank you so much. And do you have any last words, any last shares that you want to just, share? Any last comments, concerns?
Yeah, man, maybe just a quote. I think it's really easy for us to listen to podcasts or to go to Instagram and to see so many bits of pieces of advice and so many of this like info BC out here. And I just want to leave you guys with one quote, and it's in regards to finding your thing and then mastering it. And it's a quote by Bruce Lee. It's, "Fear not the man who practices 10,000 kicks one time. Fear the man that practices one kick 10,000 times." So find your purpose, man. Find the thing that lights you on fire, and don't ever let it go. Beat on it, nurture it, recover it, feed it. And what I'm talking about is your life, man. You only get one of them. And every single day that you wake up, you get an opportunity to practice life. So just know every single day you can be better. One kick, 10,000 times. You got this.
Blessings, Steve. Thank you so much. So much love for you, bro. Appreciate you.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me.